Good morning, Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom. Before we begin our service this morning, I want to remind you that if you have brought with you into the sanctuary any kind of device that will make noise, like a cell phone or anything that could beep or ring, please set it now to silent mode or vibrate. And a reminder that we don't applaud, clap, or cheer so as not to disturb the sanctity of the service, and that our Sidurim and our Chumashim, our prayer books and our holy books, they're a holy object, and we ask that you do not place them on the floor for any reason. Just put them on the seat next to you or underneath the seats where we have book holders. And please do not take any photographs during the service. I know that Asher would love to pose with you for a photograph after the service for a small fee, but during the service, since our phones are off, we'll just keep the sanctity of the moment. And we come now to Shabbat, our time of joy, a time of rest, and a time of peace. And it is my pleasure to invite our bar mitzvah, Asher Williams, to the bima together with his parents.
I'm not gonna cry. I first began writing down thoughts for your bar mitzvah shortly after Ellie's bat mitzvah. It went something like this. Dear Asher, it's May 5th, 2020. Everything is closed because of COVID-19. Ellie's Zoom mitzvah was a couple weeks ago, and she really jumped through hoops and did so well, leading it from our living room with Rabbi Litvak in his place and Mark Gettin in his, and her tutor Bina Polay in hers. Not at all how we pictured it. I can't help but wonder what the next 2 years will bring and what your bar mitzvah will look like. Hopefully, everything will be back to normal by the end of the year. I imagine that by 2022, you'll be a little taller, maybe up to my chin or even my nose by then. The way you used to wear my shoes when you were little, maybe your feet will almost be as big as mine by then. And I suppose by that time, your voice might start to get a little lower, sounding ever less like the sweet, tiny boy who used to ask if he could have a coughicle, which was a popsicle. Clearly, a lot has changed in 2 years. Time does that. Time has also shown us you hunger for knowledge and you have such a great work ethic. Two of the most important skills you need. As you grow, they will come to be paired with the wisdom that can come only from life experience. But they all must be connected to the most important component, your compass, or whatever you want to call it. Your rudder, your hammer. I've told you before, I think any religion has a great deal in common with a hammer. It can be used to tear down or to build, destroy or create. It can be a weapon, or with every motion, it can make the world a better place. Because he's no longer with us physically, I want to bring Grandpa in spirit. Your grandfather wielded a hammer, literally as a hardworking iron worker, and figuratively. While he wasn't Jewish, he lived a life of action for others, of true tikkun olam. I want to remind you of the time when I was about 11, when we were on our way home from a wedding, when he suddenly pulled the car over at an intersection. It was really more of a hard screeching stop. He said, "Stay in the car," hopped out and ran away. None of us had any idea why. Somehow, as he was driving, he'd seen that over on the crossroad, through the tall grass around a field, an elderly man was riding his bike on the side of the road and suddenly wiped out. Grandpa ran to him, balled up his suit jacket, and put it under his head, which was bleeding, tended to him, sent someone else to call an ambulance at a nearby house, and stayed with the man until he was loaded in the back of the ambulance. When he was finally back in the car, dusty and bloodstained, I don't remember which of us asked, "Why did you stop to help that man? We don't even know him." And without skipping a beat, he said, "Because that's what you do." He did so many things without expectation of reward or having anything owed in return. He did it because he believed that if you can help someone, you must. I know he would be so proud of you today, and he would hope, as I do, that you might follow his example. Yes, I have ridiculously high expectations of you. Of course I do. They are, however, not unreasonable. They are founded upon that which I have already seen from you and my belief in you and all of the things which I believe with all my heart you are capable. I hope that through your life, Judaism will be your compass and your hammer, guiding you toward and through whatever you will use it as a tool to rebuild or shape or create. Our beliefs are nothing when left on the pages of a book. They live when they are in our hands. Nobody says it's easy, and I certainly haven't mastered it either. It's a lifelong path, building one day at a time, until hopefully you build a life that, by starting with a crown of Torah, leads you to the crown of a good name. Adonai, accept our gratitude for the 13 years that have come and gone. Bless our hope for the years that are yet to be. They're happy tears. May your mercy and guidance accompany this bar mitzvah at all times, in a life marked by reverence for the Torah, a life of tikkun olam, and love for all of your children. Amen.
Well, as usual, that's kind of really hard to follow whatever Daddy does. So,
All right.
all right. Well, this won't be quite as. Anyway, all right. All right. So, Asher, this past year has been a big year, challenging, exciting for our family with lots of change. Among other things, you and your siblings started back to school in person after having been remote for over a year and then living in California before that. You started your bar mitzvah studies, and we welcomed your baby brother Jacob this December. And throughout all of these somewhat stressful changes, you remained very calm and focused, like more than any of us. I don't know if studying for your bar mitzvah was the reason you dealt with all these changes well, or maybe a coincidence. You started in a brand new school for 7th grade, smack dab in the middle of middle school where others had started in 6th grade, but you went right in 7th grade. And you were worried that you weren't going to do as well, because you did pretty well for remote learning, but you liked it, but then you did great. You made new friends, you reconnected with old friends, and you enjoyed many of your teachers, and you got straight A's. So, I don't know, you did that very well. About a year ago from now, you started studying trumpet with Daddy. You were going to enter middle school band in the fall. You had to. They said you had to do that or something that sounded like homeroom, but so it was, which was better, right? So you were going to do something. You had to do something. So we had a trumpet. So you started studying with Daddy, and he was very regimented with your lessons, and you were even more regimented with him. You go looking for him, asking for lessons. You're insistent on being the best. I don't know if it was you insisting or Daddy insisting, but probably both of you. You listened to trumpet concertos. You studied music beyond your level, even when Daddy told you not to. You took the trumpet with you everywhere. You took it to Michigan to visit Manja and Zadie, and had to make sure you weren't playing too loud for their neighbors. You took it to Kentucky with Grandma, and you had to make sure you weren't playing too loud then either, but I don't think it was as much of an issue. But you wanted to make sure that you weren't missing anything, any lesson, any beat. You ended up doing so well and liking it so much that your teacher adored you and encouraged you to do the solo ensemble, and of course you medaled in that, so in a duet. In addition to trumpet, you picked up piano this year. You did a little bit before you moved to California, then didn't do anything, and then you wanted to do piano. You motivated to learn more. It was the same thing. You listened to all these sonatas and concertos, and you wanted to study all kinds of music, and then, of course, in the end, you did really well. You ended up getting a certificate of, what was it?
Achievement.
Academic achievement.
Academic
Yeah.
achievement from the music school. And your teacher was very, very, very pleased with you. I remember when you were very little, you never wanted to play with anything pretend. No pretend kitchen toys, no pretend tools. You wanted the absolute real thing. It was very hard when you were 2 and you wanted a real hammer. You wanted the real paint. You wanted to paint the walls. You didn't want to paint pictures. You didn't want to color. You wanted the real guitar. You wanted the real microphone. You wanted the real cleaning supplies, which was hard for me at first, but then I was like, okay, that's fine. When baby Jacob arrived this December, you started helping out around the house. That was wonderful. You learned to do laundry, dishes, cook, all the things you want to do when you were 2, and we were like, fine, you can finally do them. You even learned how to use the snowblower, which is great. So have at it, as you know. All I want you to do afterwards is just clean up after yourself. So finally, with your bar mitzvah study, you've been so dedicated from day 1, always on top of when you have a lesson with Rachel Wood, even when Daddy and I forgot, like almost half of them probably, you would always remember that you had the lesson. And you've just been so motivated to study and do well. You were always so on top of it. So not everything, has been rosy and good. There's been the arguments, there's been other things that have been up and down, but growing pains, but maybe that's why you're so tall, I don't know. I'm just so impressed with how much you've matured this year, and in independence and in height, and what you've shown yourself to be capable of, and I'm just so very proud of you.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, lehit atef batzitzit.
We begin our service this morning with the singing of Ma Yafeh Hayom, which can be found on page 10.
Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat Shalom.
It is my pleasure to invite forward Esther Williams to lead us in our morning blessings, which can be found on page 6 with the reading, May the Door.
May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all those who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selflessness, and harshness. May this synagogue, for all who enter the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
We continue on page 195 as we rise for the singing of Baruch Hu.
La 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 la
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Please be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvarei choshech, oseh shalom uvarei et hakol, hameir la'aretz, v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mekadesh bechol yom tamid, ma'aseh v'reishit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam bechochma asita, mal'a ha'aretz kinyanecha. Tiparach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, v'al me'orei or she'asita, yifa'arucha selah. Or chadash al tzion ta'ir, v'nizkeh kulanu mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'ma'orot. Please turn to page 199. O God, inspiration and guide for all, you've spoken in 1,000 tongues for us to hear. In every land and every age, your children have heard you and imagined you in separate ways. And yet, O God, you are one, unifier of humanity. We give thanks for the sages and teachers who bring us understanding of your will. Gratefully, we recall the lawgivers and prophets, the psalmists and sages of Israel. And joyfully, we remember that from the dawn of Israel's life, we would turn to you and find purpose. May the teachings of our ancestors live on in our minds and their passion for righteousness stir in our hearts. Help us to live so that our daily conduct reveals the beauty and wisdom of your truth. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael ba'ahava.
We continue on page 200 with Shema. Will the congregation please rise?
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha vehayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam livanecha, vidibarta bam, vishivtecha bevetecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvshochbecha, uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayula totafot bein einecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim L'chiot lachem lelochim, ani Adonai Elohechem. Sing the song of men and women, joined in understanding and respect. The song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot oseh pele, nora tehilot oseh pele. Shira chadasha, shibchu geulim, l'shimcha sfat hayam, yachad kulam hodu, v'yimlechu ve'ameru. Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch, le'olam va'ed.
We continue on page 205 with our congregational tefillah. Will the congregation please rise?
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'chanei HaKol, V'zocher Hastei Avot Ve'imahot, Umevi Geula Lifnei V'nehem, Lema'an Shemo Ba'ahava, Melech Chozer Umashia Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Izrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye metim atah Rav le'oshia, Morid hatal. Mecholkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye metim berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim, Umati rasurim, umechayim emunato, lishenei afar, michamocha ba'al givurot, umido melach, melech memit, umechayeh, umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman nata lechayot metim. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hametim. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, kishem shemakdishim oto ishme marom, kakatuv al yad neviecha, v'kara ze el ze ve'amar, kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivaot, Melochol haaretz, Kivodo, Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Ma'adir, Shimcho bechol haaretz, Baruch Kivod Adonai, Mimkomo, Echad hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, V'Hu Yashmienu, Rachamav le'enei kol chai, Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Yichzion, L'dor v'dor, Hallelujah. L'dor v'dor nagid god lecha, Ul netzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh.
Will the congregation please be seated?
Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'koreh, Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'koreh, Oneg Shabbat. Mikadasheh, Mikadasheh Shvi Shabbat, Kulam yisbehu, v'yitangu metuvecha Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'koreh, Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malechutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'koreh, Oneg Shabbat.
We continue on the bottom of page 213.
Modim anachnu lach, she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu, v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, le'olam va'ed. Tzur chayenu, magen yishenu, atahu lador vador. We pray that we may live, not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulcha na'eh lehodot.
We pause for a moment of silent meditation, followed by Oseh Shalom on page 219.
Oseh Shalom b'mromam, Hu yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh Shalom, yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
We come now to Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of the Torah, which can be found in our Sidurim, in our prayer book, on page 244. It is my pleasure to invite forward at this time John and Marcia Eulenberg, Esther Williams, Mitch, and Rachel Williams.
אין כמוך ואלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו לשלום, לשלום, לשלום.
Physically passing the Torah from one generation to the next is a beloved ritual for our B'nai Mitzvah families. And for a long time during COVID, we didn't get to physically have the Torah. It was on Zoom or it was in person and we couldn't pass the Torah. But we are so grateful to be together this morning to say together, which we do at every B'nai Mitzvah, this is the Torah, which God gave to Moses. Moses passed it to Joshua, from Joshua to the prophets, from the prophets to the sages, from one generation of our people to the next. And as we place this Torah in Asher's arms today, you form a new link in this chain of transmission. And so today, the generations of your family, Asher, pass this Torah down to you, because every generation imparts eternal truths in modern ways to the next generation. The legacy of family, love, and knowledge, these are the traditions that parents and grandparents pass. And Asher, as you form the newest link in this chain, it is our hope that you will cherish and treasure the Torah as you grow up. We continue on page 247.
In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shmo.
Gadlu l'Adonai iti, unurmama shemo yachdav. Exalt Adonai with me, let us extol God's name together.
Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Haolam Omed. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Haolam Haolam Omed. Al HaTorah ve'al Halodah ve'al Gemilut Chasadim. Al HaTorah ve'al Halodah ve'al Gemilut Sani.
Please be seated. Our Torah portion for this Shabbat, V'halotecha, begins briefly by discussing the daily lighting of the golden menorah in the Mishkan or tabernacle, followed by a description of the Levites' consecration ritual. The Torah then describes the cloud and the fire which alternated resting above the Mishkan, and the Torah describes the standard procedure by which the children of Israel would break camp to continue their travels in the desert. And soon after leaving Mount Sinai and journeying to the wilderness of Paran, the people begin a series of bitter complaints, and the children of Israel are dissatisfied with their manna, the daily miraculous portion of heavenly bread. And as Moses begins to despair, God commands him to select 70 elders to form the Sanhedrin, the court, which would assist him in leading the nation. You can follow along with the Etz Chaim commentaries, the large maroon books that are found underneath the seat in front of you, or if you're in the front row, underneath your seat. Those Etz Chaim commentaries are the large maroon books, beginning on page 816. Ya'amod Yona ben Yeshaya Ubela libi la'aliyah haTorah ta'amod Masha bat Lev Shmuel Ubrena Fagel la'aliyah haTorah. Just want to show you that it starts right there. I'm going to have you hold this. Over here, please.
Touch kiss.
Sure, you can touch right here.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch ata Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Daber el Aharon v'emarta elav v'halotecha et hanerot el mul penei hamenorah yiru shivat hanerot. Vayas Cain Aharon el mul penei hamenorah hela neroteha Kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe.
Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch ata Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. I'm going to have you come around to the side. Ya'amod Yishaya ben Yona umasha la'aliyah haTorah.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
וזה מעשה המנורה, מקשה זהב, עד ירך, עד פרך, מקשה היא כמראה. אשר הראה אדוני את משה, כן עשה את המנורה. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, קח את הלוויים מתוך בני ישראל, וטיהרת אותם.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, נותן התורה.
Ta'amod Elishavet, Sarah bat Binyamin v'Rachelea, la'aliyah ha'Torah.
Stand right by the papers. Okay.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
V'cho taseh lahem l'taharam, hazeh alehem mechatat, v'hevihiru tar al kol besaram, v'chibsu vigdehem v'hiteharu. V'lakhu par ben bakar uminchato sole belulav v'shamen ufarsheni ben bakar tikach lechatat v'hikravta et halviim lifnei ohel moed v'hikalta et koladat bnei Yisrael.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Asher Koach, great job. We'll have you stand here.
Ya'amod Benyamin ben Avraham v'Sara la'aliyah ha'Torah. Ta'amod Rachelea bat Yona u'Masha la'aliyah ha'Torah.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Leolam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
V'hikravta et halviim lifnei Adonai, v'simchu v'nei Yisrael, et yedehem al halviim, v'heini Aharon et halviim tnufa lifnei Adonai, me'et v'nei Yisrael, v'hayu la'avot et avodat Adonai. V'halviim yismechu et yedehem al rosh haparim, v'aseh et ha'echad chatat, v'et ha'echad ola l'Adonai lechaper al halviim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Now, before we have Asher go and sit down and Elizabeth go sit down, we're just going to take a moment to look at this gorgeousness up here of post bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah, parents. This is fabulous. Would you come and get a good picture of this? Look at this. This is a picture moment, is it not? I'm telling you, I'm going to step back so you can have your smiles. Big Elizabeth and Asher
All right.
go sit down. Yep, very good. That was well done. I'm gonna roll the Torah. You stay here, though. Don't leave me. 'Cause you have to stay here. It's like Sugar Mountain. You can't be 20 and you can't come back if you go sit down. So there you go. All right. Well, at this time in our worship service, our thoughts turn to those of our families and community who are ill and in need of healing. We think this morning of Kristen Nystro, Richard Vane, Arthur Lang, Heather Borzak, Dick McLean, Quince Newman, Brooke Ann Gottesman, Bridget Stern, Jim Berry, Jay Field, the Mix family, Len Schultzman, Alan and Mary Jo Wolski, Joy Rosenthal, and Shari Katz, Gary Tatiner, Cheryl Hildebrand, Cheryl Ball, Rhonda Rhodes, David Menikoff, Rusty Taylor, John Eulenberg, Rabbi Bruce Goldwasser, Rabbi Fred Wanger, Jean Maynard, Jacqueline Sullivan, Julie Melvin, Carol Nymark, Catherine Smith, Maurice Saladki, and Alan, and all who suffer whom we know not by name. Misha Berach, Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, V'Yaakov, Ve'imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, V'Leah, Hu Yivarech V'Rapeh et Kol Cholei Yisrael. Vayishlach lahem bimheira refuah shlema refuah tanefesh refuah taguf v'nomar. Amen. We continue with Misha Berach.
Before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe berach imotenu mikol bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Our Torah portion this morning concludes with Miriam, Moses' sister, speaking Lashon Hara, or slander, to her brother Aaron about their brother Moses. She is punished with Sara'at, which is a skin disease representative of a spiritual shortcoming, and is quarantined outside the camp for 7 days. You can follow along with Asher's Maftir portion in the Etz Chaim commentary on page 835. Ya'amod, 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 Asher ben Benyamin v'rachalea, habachur habar mitzvah.
Baruchu et Adonai hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato, Baruch ata Adonai, noten ha'Torah.
Amen. Rachel, can you hold the Torah open?
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, ve'aviha yarok yarak bifaneha halo tikaleim shivat yamim tisager Shivat Yamim Michus Lamachaneh Va'achar Teasef V'tisager Miriam Mechutz Lamachaneh Shivat Yamim V'ha'am Lo Nas'a Ad Teasef Miriam V'achar Naseu Ha'am Mechatzerot Vayachanu Bamidbar Haran. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ta'amod Yona Laila bat Michal Hagba. Ta'amod Shira Rina Eliana bat Leo Yocheved ve'Adam Golelet. Hugs and kisses. You're going to stand over there.
V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe.
Please be seated. The Haftarah for this morning focuses on the daily lighting of the menorah and its lamps. And in this Haftarah, the prophet Zechariah has a vision of the menorah. Next to the menorah are 2 olive trees, which provide a continuous supply of oil. And this was to symbolize that God provides for all of our needs at all times, even if we don't always see it. You can follow along with Asher's Haftarah portion in the Etz Chaim commentaries, the large maroon books, starting on page 838. He will be reading from chapter 4, starting with verse 4.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar binviim tovim v'ratza v'divrehem hanama'arim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'inviei ha'emet v'tzedek. Bayom hahu neum Adonai tzivaot tikreu ish l're'ehu el tachat gefen ve'el tachat ha'ena. Vayashav hamalach hadover bi va'ireni ke'ish asher ye'or mishnato. Vayomer Elai ma'ata ro'eh va'omar ra'iti v'hinei minorat zahav kula v'gula al rosha v'shiva neroteha aleha shiva v'shiva mutzakot lanerot asher al rosha ushnaim zeitim aleha echad mimin hagula ve'echad al semolach va'an va'omar el hamalach hadover bi lemor ma'ele Adoni. Vayan hamalach hadover bi vayomer Elai halo yadata mahema ele vaomar lo Adoni. Vayan vayomer Elai lemor Zeh devar Adonai el Zerubbabel lemor. Lo v'chayil v'lo v'choach ki im barachim amar Adonai tzevaot. Miata har hagadol lifnei Zerubbabel lemishor v'hotzi et ha'even harosha teshuot chen la. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el hane'eman haomer ve'oseh hamdaber kayem shekul devarav emet tzedek al haTorah v'al ha'avodah v'al hanvi'im v'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Likdusha v'limnucha lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarachim otach yitbarach shimcha befi chol chai tamid leolam va'ed baruch ata Adonai mekadesh ha'shabbat.
The prayer for America and the prayer for the state of Israel can be found in our Sidurim, in our prayer book, starting on page 258. It is my pleasure to invite forward at this time to lead us in those prayers Melinda Hill and Colin Williams.
O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen.
O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
Service continues on page 256 as we rise to return the Torah to the Ark.
Yehalaluv et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado. Let us praise the name of Adonai, for God's name alone is exalted. God's majesty is above the earth and heaven, and God is the strength of our people, making God's faithful ones, Israel, a people close to the eternal. Hallelujah.
It's Chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tomechecha meushar tirachecha tarchenoam v'chol netivotecha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yamin
The Torah portion for today is called Baha'alotecha, a name translating to When You Light the Lamps. The portion begins with many seemingly unrelated topics which are loosely strung together. The lighting of the seven-candle menorah, followed by the process of consecration performed by Moses upon the Levites, the subsequent observance of their readiness to participate in the tent of meeting, and the observance of Passover. A major theme of the book of Numbers, complaining, follows, with the Israelites complaining of bland meat and contrasting it to Egypt, where they thought the food was better. At Hazeroth, towards the end of the portion, Moses decides to marry a Cushite woman. Miriam and Aaron disagree with Moses' decision, and, as a result, speak out against him for marrying a foreigner. God is angered by Miriam and Aaron's actions, showing that God trusts Moses implicitly and makes it clear to Moses what God wants or needs from him and the Israelite people. It's a punishment. God sickens Miriam with leprosy, at which point she is banned outside the camp for 7 days. Moses prays and pleads with God, and as a result, God heals Miriam. Afterwards, Miriam is taken back inside, and the Israelites descend into the wilderness of Paran, located within the Sinai Peninsula. Baha'alotecha includes many themes that are applicable to the modern age, from tolerance to the idea that humans are not invincible and can be easily manipulated. I believe that one of the most important themes in this portion is tolerance, especially of other groups of people. This is most evident in Miriam and Aaron's confrontation with Moses over his wife, a Cushite woman, who was discriminated against for being an outsider. The Cushites appear many times throughout the Torah and are almost always being defended by God, who treat them as equals to the Israelites, despite the Israelites not always agreeing. In this case, Moses is confronted by Miriam and Aaron, who believe Moses' wife to be inferior to them and them to be equal to Moses. Because of this, Aaron and Miriam, but especially Miriam, believe she must be expelled from the camp. This section of the Torah shows us that tolerance and intolerance are creations of the human mind. Throughout the Torah, God is shown to encourage tolerance and discourage biases among other culture groups like the Israelites. In this specific section, God shows Miriam and Aaron the importance of tolerance for others. This idea of ethnic tolerance is still relevant today. The idea of tolerance and intolerance still occur in many parts of the world, including in our local community. For example, the rise of religious coexistence in the past few centuries is a remarkable show of the evolution of tolerance. The world has gone from inquisitions in times of old, such as the famous Roman and Spanish inquisitions, which sought to rid Europe of Jews, Muslims, and other religions, to having a greater religious tolerance in modern day. This serves as a mark of the progress towards the ethnic tolerance which God tried to instill in the Israelites. Another example of tolerance is the implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, including the one here at Etz Chaim, which helps promote a greater sense of welcoming and acceptance for all people who enter our doors. These programs and policies show us that the principle of tolerance, which God showed Miriam and Aaron, are still alive in the modern day. Becoming bar mitzvah is an important milestone for me and my family. I have learned many important skills along the way, from bettering my Hebrew skills to understanding the lessons taught in the Torah. These lessons have helped me to better appreciate the world around me and to improve my understanding navigating everyday life. Becoming bar mitzvah is an important milestone for me and my family. In a way, I've been slowly preparing for this day for the past 13 years, all of it culminating in this service. It is even more meaningful knowing that I am now an adult in the eyes of the Jewish community. Being able to participate in a minyan will allow me to be a fully integrated member of the Jewish community. With the knowledge at this point marks the start of my independence as a Jewish adult, I would like to continue growing as a Jewish person by visiting the land of Israel in the future and exploring its cultural and historical sites. Additionally, I would like to learn enough Hebrew so that I can understand religious texts like the Torah and Haftarah with a more personal translation and be able to communicate with others who speak Hebrew. Finally, I would like to further my Jewish path by continuing to attend services, whether online or in person. This will help me stay involved in congregation at Chaim and as a part of the Jewish community. The project I chose from a mitzvah project was beautifying the synagogue and the landscape surrounding it. I chose this because I know that one of the most central elements of Judaism is a synagogue, and it is a commandment to treat it with respect. Leviticus 19:30 states that, quote, "You shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary, I am the Lord." A verse which can be interpreted as meaning to care for the sanctuary or temple and treat it with respect. I believe that having a beautiful synagogue means having a better experience with Jewish worship, while also fulfilling the commandment of serving the sanctuary with reverence. Through doing this project, I learned that I enjoy helping people and doing kind acts. By working hard and spending my time caring for the temple, I realized the importance of gardeners and gained a newfound admiration for their ability to work consistently under such strenuous circumstances. Overall, this project has taught me that although some work may be hard, its reward is greater in the long run. There are many people here today who I would like to thank. I would like to start off by thanking both Rabbi Kasnowski and Rabbi Weiner for teaching me the order and prayers of the service, teaching me important lessons, guiding me, and making me a better person. I would also like to add a special shout out for Rabbi Kasnowski for being a funny, generous, caring person that always says to me what needs to be said and gives things to me straight. I wish to thank Miss Rachel Wood and my grandfather, Dr. John Eulenberg, for their roles in teaching me how to read, chant, and understand my prayers, blessings, Torah, and Haftarah. I would like to thank Cindy Michalowski for providing fantastic music at the service and so many others like it. I would like to thank my friends and family for supporting me throughout this time and for giving me constant reassurance or help whenever it was needed. I would like to thank everybody for taking your precious time to be here with me and joining the celebration today, but especially those who traveled from out of state or even from across the country to be here. Manga and Zadie, and Tom and Rose from Michigan, Uncle Alex from California, and Aunt Diana from Colorado. I would like to thank my grandparents for being the greatest of all time and for giving me an example to live by. Thank you to my aunts and uncles for being funny, kind, and amazing people to be around. Thank you to my siblings, Ellie, Colin, Simone, and recently Jacob, for putting up with me even when it was hard for them. Thank you for supporting me whenever I needed help, whether it be with my homework, a project, or simply giving our cats baths. I would like to thank my parents for helping me at every point along the way, regardless of how bad the situation may have been or how well it turned out. Thank you for supporting me with any endeavor I chose to partake in, regardless of how successful it ended up being in the long run. For teaching me how to be a good person and for always being generous. Thank you all. Shabbat Shalom.
Asher, all I'm just going to say is, wow. That was terrific.
Thank you.
Yes, I am telling you. I want to point out that the plants on the bima are part of the plants that Asher used to beautify our synagogue.
And we're going to plant those ones.
And we're going to plant those too. Not today, but
Yeah,
eventually.
eventually. Like tomorrow, probably.
Well, even so,
Yeah.
not in your suit.
Yeah.
'Cause, if you notice, we gardeners don't wear our suits.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you, I mean, sometimes my heels aerate my lawn, but other than that, just, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you, Asher, for not only beautifying the outside of our sanctuary, but also beautifying the inside. By the way, you taught us today so beautifully. Now, as long as we're telling stories about your family, I'm going to tell a couple of quick stories. The first one about your dad, he probably doesn't remember this, but just as he told a story about your grandfather, many years ago, before you moved away, when you were living in Wheaton, we had someone passed away, and we didn't have enough people to make a minyan. And so I looked in the congregational directory to see who lived in Wheaton, and I called your dad, and I said, we need a 10th person for a minyan. Can you come? And he said, you know, the kids are crying. And he said, I'll be right over. And he joined us to make the minyan. And now you are going to be able to make a minyan too. And this is very good. Expect some phone calls, because you never know. But also, I have watched your family get larger and bigger, move away and come back. And I always said that when they moved away, they took 10% of our entire religious school with them. So we're so glad you're back now. You're 12% of our religious school. But I was with you for family simchas and got to see your grandparents, and I know they see us every Friday night on the stream, and it's just so wonderful to go from strength to strength. And you, Asher, as the second born of this amazing family, whose bat mitzvah, thankfully you were able to have your bat mitzvah on Zoom. I got to be there. I've never been to a California bat mitzvah. Now I have. But Asher, you, La Briute, were simply terrific. The way you taught us, all that you do for our community, all that your family does for our community. I have no doubt that just as beautiful as your plants are, is the beauty that you are bringing to us as you continue through your life. And on behalf of Rabbi Weiner, who got installed last night and today is celebrating with her family, we are so proud of not only all that you have done, but the person that you are. the mensch that you are, and we can't wait to see all the wonderful things you're going to do in the future. And in that spirit, Asher, I ask you to join me at the Ark for a blessing, and I ask the congregation to please rise.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu hazman hazeh.
May God bless you and keep you. May God be kind and gracious unto you. May God's countenance be lifted up unto you and grant you the most precious gift of peace. Please be seated.
Oh,
Okay. I'll do it this way.
all right.
Asher, congratulations today on the occasion of your bar mitzvah. It was wonderful listening to lead us in worship, chant Torah and Haftorah with such confidence and enthusiasm, and you have absolutely a wonderful voice.
Thank you.
Very calm. I have your certificate of bar mitzvah to present you today to show that you've completed the requirements necessary to make this day possible. Also, these two gift certificates that will be able to help you get to that land of Israel on a trip. And on behalf of the Brotherhood and Sisterhood of this congregation, this gift take forward from today on and remember today by. Mazel tov to you.
Thank you.
Mitch, Rachel, Ellie, Simone, Colin, and Jacob, and the rest of your family and friends are here to share with you today. Mazel tov, Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
As we prepare to begin our concluding prayers, it is my pleasure to invite to the bima to open our ark, Simone Williams. We continue with Aleinu on page 282. Will the congregation please rise?
Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Please be seated.
ונאמר וחי אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
At this time in our worship service, our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth and whose yahrzeit we commemorate this Shabbat. We recall with reverence Nathan Gorbian, Sam Polk, Suzanne Spenadel, Sylvia Porton, Marjorie Brackman, Harry Diamond, Francis Krause, Gunborg Halberg, Jeffrey David Silver, Mimi Silverstein, Emmanuel Jacobson, Richard Sefman, Joanne Soyring, Rose Chafek, Marty Hyams, Nathan Roddersman, and Murray Ritzner. We also mourn the recent passing of Claire Weiner, grandmother of Rabbi Jesse Weiner, Ashley Rose, Gloria Kahn, and Myra Jetty. Our griefs and sympathies are mingled as together we recite Kadisha tome, The Mourner's Kaddish, which can be found in our Sidurim on page 294, and I ask if you can do so at this time to please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalal v'zman kari v'imru, amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudasha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen.
V'imru, amen. V'imru, amen. V'imru, amen. V'imru, amen.
It is my pleasure to invite to the Bima at this time the entire Williams family, and we are going to close this morning with the singing of Ki Eshmera Shabbat, which can be found on page 330, followed by Kiddush and Motzi.
Ki eshmera Shabbat, en ishmereni. Ki eshmera Shabbat, en ishmereni. Oti leolameyan, beno uveni. Oti leolameyan, beno uveni.
O God, on this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer to life, to peace, to joy, and to Shabbat rest. May we find holiness in our deeds and worth in our study of Torah. Mazel Tov, Shabbat Shalom. And Asher, come on forward, everybody with your family. Look at, everybody should take a giant step forward. You didn't say, Rabbi, may I? Just kidding, come on forward. And we join together. Oh, let's bring up Jacob, for sure. This is a picture. All right, let's sing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen l'chaim. And we sing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, b'tei avon. B'tei avon, everyone, let's go have a cookie. Okay, Yasher Koach is